Welcome to Let's Talk Kenmore, a lighthearted podcast aimed at connecting our listeners to their local government and demystifying the role of government in the city of Kenmore. I'm your host, Amber Clifton. In today's episode, I sit down with longtime Kenmore resident and geocaching expert Jeff Weaver, along with UW faculty Dr. Jason Lambacher, Professor of Art and Politics of Walking, and Dana Washington, Community Engaged Program Manager. Jason, Jeff, and Dana share their experience collaborating with the City of Kenmore and UW students for the Adventure Lab project. Please enjoy this episode of Let's Talk Kenmore. Welcome to Let's Talk Kenmore. I am here today with Dr. Jason Lambacher from UW, Dana Washington, the Community Engaged Learning Program Manager from UW, and one of Kenmore's own residents, Jeff Weaver, who is a geocaching expert. And they are going to educate me and you today on this geocaching project where Kenmore partnered with UW and students. Is that right, Dana and Jason?
Yep. Or UW Bothell in particular.
UW Bothell. Okay, so I have actually no idea what geocaching is. So Jeff, you're the expert. For folks who don't know, what is geocaching?
Yeah, it's one of my passions, so I love to talk about it.
Good.
Geocaching is a worldwide location-based game in which people use a GPS receiver, or more commonly a mobile device like a smartphone, to hide and seek a container called a geocache, or most people call it cache.
Okay.
And they're at outdoor locations marked by coordinates. So once found, you can log your find on a paper log in the cache or on the website, or both, usually both. The old joke is, quote, I use multi-million-dollar satellites to find Tupperware hidden in the woods. And that's a really good description of kind of a stereotypical, kind of the original type of caching. And nowadays there are 20 different types of caches, including mysteries, where you need to solve a puzzle to get the final coordinates, virtuals, where you go to a location, often where a physical container can't be hidden, like there's one at the top of Mount Rainier, for example. And you take a picture there. There's events. There's Earth caches, where you learn about geology. And there's Adventure Labs, which is one of the newest types, and that's the one that we're talking about today.
Adventure Labs. So who's placing these objects in like who's doing this? You?
Yeah, any geocacher can.
Wow.
So somebody places it, and then I go find it, and a lot of people go find it, and vice versa. I've got a number that I've hidden that people love to go find, and anyone can do it.
That is so cool. Okay, this might be a stupid question, but is like Pokemon Go like a form of that?
You can think of it as similar. So Pokemon actually that might be more analogous to the Adventure Lab, where it's all virtual, as opposed to an actual geocache with a physical container. But the concept is similar. You're using a device, and you're following a signal, and you go to a location, and then you do something to interact with it.
That's so fun. So just like a kind of a giant treasure hunt.
It's exactly a giant treasure hunt.
That's really cool. So how did you get into this initially?
I personally love camping and hiking. I love doing outdoor things. And a friend of mine 20 years ago recommended, you got to check out this thing called geocaching. I'd never heard of it. And back then you really needed a separate GPS receiver. I went and bought one, and I was instantly hooked.
Wow.
And for me, it's such a great way to explore the world, and, find new locations that I likely would have never found on my own, like a hike to a lake, or when our kids were little, we would explore Kenmore looking for geocaches, and we would find parks we'd never heard of.
Really?
And then we'd take the kids back there to play on the slides or whatever. So it's just a great way to discover things.
That is so cool. I've never done this before, but now I really want to, because this sounds like a lot of fun. So how did this relationship with you and the UW students come to be?
Oh, okay. I was initially contacted by Dana from UW Bothell, And I think she found me since I have a number of geocaches hidden in this area. And when I heard they needed some geocaching expertise for the class and it involved community building, I was all in because those are two of my passions.
It was a DM. So, sometimes you just gotta direct message people to get a partnership going.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out. This is very cool. So what is the class and what's the project? Can one of either Jason or Dana explain that?
So this is a class called the Art and Politics of Walking. And so it's a first year class. We have a program called the Discovery Corps. And the whole idea is to have a professor teach a class from a very interdisciplinary point of view on a theme like walking. I also teach a class on comedy, and you sort of tease it apart from different perspectives, sort of literary, philosophical, scientific, health oriented. And so walking is just one of those classes that I've long been a walker and a hiker, maybe somewhat like Jeff, and as an opportunity to get to know a place. And so I've got a whole practicum with this class I've been working with for a while, meaning that we're not just studying, books and talking about them in class. They're going out and doing different kinds of walks and having different kinds of adventures. And so when Dana came to me in the summer and said, "Hey, I've got this idea, to work and partner with the city of Kenmore that might work really well with your walking class," I was all interested in that. And so that's kind of how it got started for me, at least, sometime in midsummer. And we started brainstorming a little bit and thought it would just be a great fit.
That's so cool.
I will say it was not my idea. Shout out to Chase. Chase is our community engagement research program manager. So they actually found out about geocache first, and they're like, "Oh, geocache walking, this would be great." And I was like, "What is that?" But they're like, "It's going to be like a community engaged project more so than a research project." So I was like, "Okay, that's my bag. I'm going to go ahead and do some research." I downloaded the app first, and then there was like a bunch of caches around me. So I did some exploring, and then I didn't know that literally anybody can do geocache. So I went into my partnership mode and I was like, "Where's the boss? Where's the headquarters?" So I
where's the geocache office?
Yeah, and it was literally like 15 minutes away from my house. So I was like, "Okay, great."
That's so cool.
And it's so fun because they actually have a cache to get to the office. So it's like a whole thing. So I took a tour of the office, and again, just direct message Jeff. I just walked into the office and was like, "Hey, who works here? We kind of want to do this for a project." And then the front desk person just so happened to be someone that was a part of the admin team. So yeah, they were like, "I love that you're doing this, but you really don't need our permission or anything." Like that's the whole point of this app, is for community engagement and community building. So definitely go ahead and just direct message whoever is over there. So that's kind of how the geocaching part came to be. But City of Kenmore came to be through talking with Jason and talking about how Bothell kind of in its own little bubble, and we don't want our students to have to commute too far. So we really just kind of looked along the bus line of like, what are the closest parks? And then that's when we found the Kenmore Park, and we've already worked with Lauren a lot on some of our other community engaged projects. And when we told her about this, she was so excited, and it was a lot of energy in this project of random things that came together. So we're very thankful for that. But kind of what Jason was talking about, Jason is a very unique professor. So not all classes are taught with experiential learning components. So that's kind of what a community engaged learning course is taking that theory and applying it to a real world practice somehow. So Jason could have just taught a lot about walking and like the history behind it, but actually having his students do a project in the community for that is going to give them a better experience and kind of hone in the learning a little bit more. So that's what we do to kind of take those classes that can be made into experiential learning opportunities. And that's why we need community partners and awesome community members like Jeff and City of Kenmore to really bring these courses to life and have students have a deeper learning experience.
That is so cool. Jason, I wish that I had you as a professor, because that's very, very cool. And I bet the students were thrilled to be able to participate in such a hands-on, meaningful way.
One thing I would say, just to add on to what Dana said, is that in a class like this, we really wanted to get students to know a place. And for many students that go to UW Bothell, it's definitely a commuter campus. They don't live in Bothell. They're coming from Snohomish County or King County. And so this is just a great way for them to get to know the Bothell Kenmore area, just a little bit more, right? And so for many of them, this was the first time they've really spent much time in Kenmore. And so that was really exciting for me. I think for many of our partners here to have them, learn a little bit more about Kenmore and just where they're, rather than just driving in and leaving.
Yeah, for sure. That is so neat. So Jeff, what did your assist look like with the students?
Yeah, really, I was just kind of a consultant. I brought in my geocaching expertise to advise them really on how best to place a geocache, make sure they followed the rules and guidelines. For Adventure Labs, there's more guidelines around physical containers. They can't be too close to each other. And there's certain areas they can't be, like near schools, et cetera. And I just came in to make sure that they were following all the guidelines so that when it was time to publish and make it available, that it would actually work and be successful. But the students were really responsible for all the subject matter, all the placement, all the content that went into it. One more kind of piece of serendipity that came up was this park, the ʷadis Park, historically was really just kind of an overgrown mass. Occasionally there was homeless people living there. This is going way back 20 years. And a few years ago, it was developed into this very cool new waterfront park. And I found that a lot of my friends and neighbors in the area hadn't heard about it. And I thought, what a great place to put an adventure lab. And so when Dana came to me, there was actually already an adventure lab in that park that I had placed about a year ago, trying to draw people there because it's such a great park. And we were able, by working within the guidelines, we were able to place this one that was related to the class. We were able to place that there as well. So there's now 2 reasons to go to the park, and it's really getting a lot of activity.
Yeah, it's really, our parks department did an amazing job. It's beautiful there. And you're right, it's kind of tucked away and a lot of people don't really know that it exists, but yeah, it's really beautiful. So I'm glad that you chose ʷadis Park because it's definitely worth the visit. So what's the difference between Adventure Lab and geocaching? I'm not understanding the difference. Sorry.
Sure. No, it's easy to get confused. So when you talk about a geocache, there's actually, as I said, there's 20 different types. There's one of the things I love about the game is there's almost as many ways to play the game as there are people who play the game. So in Adventure Lab, it's a virtual cache, meaning there's no physical container, and they come with multiple waypoints, usually around a common theme, and each waypoint has an attached question that's only unlocked when you get close enough. So you have to be moving around in the physical world with your device, and once you get within that radius, the question is unlocked, and it's often, what do you see here? What's on the sign? What you'll find in this one is it's a lot around the history of the park, the native plants, and the native tribes that once lived there. And so it's, you still have the experience of walking around the park and seeing the waterfront and the boat launch and the wildlife, but you also learn about what the park used to be. Historically it was a native residential site for the tribes that lived in the area. Then it became a farm, and you learn all this as you go through it.
So what kind of research went into that for the students to be able to do all of these little clues?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We kind of decided as a class, but also in partnership with Lauren, who gave us a lot of good resources to kind of figure out what the different waypoints would be and in what sequence and in what order. So when you show up at the park, you go to waypoint 1, and then you answer those questions and go to waypoint 2. And so we thought a little bit about learning about the history of the park and its original incarnation formation as a native settlement and a native fishing village. And there was a cannery there at one point, and then a farm. And so we kind of learned, we think a little bit about what would be the UX experience or the user experience of somebody who is doing this adventure lab. And so we thought about, the history would be a great place to start as you come into the parking lot in most cases for people. Then to move on to some environmental aspect of the park, some of the restoration, when they've really done an amazing job. It's a beautiful park. And I never experienced it, I've only seen it as this beautiful gem, in Kenmore, and not, maybe what it was in the last couple of decades. So we had some environmental components, and we had a really good, when we all met there for the first time as students and with Lauren, one of the previous parks managers who was in charge of the environmental restoration and making decisions about what they wanted to do, who since moved on to, I think she's in Kirkland now.
Yeah, Maureen.
Yeah, Maureen. So she did a great job talking about a lot of the different, how difficult it was and how time consuming, and students learned a lot about environmental policy and how to work with regulations and working with the county and getting grants and, making choices about what kind of habitat they wanted to create. And so for fish, for birds, and our students were delighted to see otters there, during that experience too. So it was just pretty remarkable. But also then to learn about the name change and to honor the original native village into the change from, was it Squire Park before? Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah.
And so I think that was an important process. And maybe one other aspect that we researched I thought was important was for students to just learn a little bit about bond measures and how this was a bond measure for the walkways and waterways policy back in 2015, right? And so this was just one of many parts of Kenmore that were refurbished with citizens taxing themselves. And my students, for most of them, have never maybe heard of a bond measure, but to really see it in action, that citizens can tax themselves to make improvements, to have better access to the water, to improve parks, and to do many other things besides. So I was able to talk with them about what a bond measure is, and they were able to research different phases of it and how it went through that process. They learned a little bit about civics in the course of doing it too.
That's very cool. A little bit of everything in there. So would you say, Jeff, is this a good, for somebody who has never done geocaching before, is this Adventure Lab a good place to start?
I think it's a great place to start. I think, so I'll just speak from my experience, going to a place that's new, that's interesting, having a great experience. To me, that's what makes geocaching great. And so this is a great place to start. And honestly, I would say since geocaching was actually founded in this area, the company Geocaching is based down in Fremont. The Pacific Northwest is riddled with geocaches. I mean, literally, the map is almost full. And so wherever you are, if you want to get started, all you need to do is download the app, create a free account. All you need is an email address, and then look around on the map. And there are likely multiple geocaches within a mile of wherever you are. It's just the area is dense with them of all types, of all 20 types. So yes, it's a great place to start, but start wherever you are. And like I said, there's so many different ways to play the game. Whether you just want to do virtuals, whether you just want to do physicals, any other variations, just get out and try it and start playing with it.
Very cool. For all of you, was there anything about Kenmore that you learned that you didn't know before? I just learned that there used to be a farm there. I live here and I had no idea that there was a farm there. I can't even imagine that. But anything else that was surprising?
I think the greatest thing I've learned from it is just the staff at City of Kenmore. Just because there's so much passion and making sure that the citizens of Kenmore feel included and that there is a community building there. And it's so close to Bothell. I'm happy that our students got to experience that passion from leadership to make the place feel good.
That's good to hear.
I would echo that as well, Dana. And maybe on my end, I've spent some time in Kenmore. I like to go to restaurants, and I drive through. I live in Seattle, and I go to Bothell, most days of the week. So I'm often traveling through, but I've never been to this park before. So that was just, I got a new place to check out, and in learning more about the walkways and waterways, I'm also eager to explore other, little nooks and crannies of Kenmore as well. Mm-hmm. I had a friend that moved up to Kenmore when I first ever heard of it was in about the year 2000. And I always assumed that Kenmore has been around for a long time, like Bothell Kirkland and Bellevue. And I didn't realize it was only incorporated in 1998. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't realize that it was such a young city, and maybe that speaks to some of the passion for some of the city workers who are like, oh, this is so exciting to just kind of what can we do to this kind of brand new town. And so I think learning for me about the walkways and waterways bond measure was really exciting to kind of see, what Lauren was talking to us at length about, what they were really looking for as they surveyed, residents. But what do we want to do? And access to the water, improving parks, and access to walkability in the city was a big deal. And as somebody who teaches some of this stuff about walking and walkability, that was really exciting for me.
Jeff, you're a longtime resident. Did you learn anything new when you collaborated on this project?
I've been sitting here trying to think of what I learned that was new, and I've actually lived here since before the city was incorporated, and so this project, no.
It's okay. It's okay.
Well, we learned a lot from you, Jeff. That was good.
Yeah, yes. I was so glad to be involved. Just because, like I said, I mean, geocaching obviously is a passion, but really a lot of what I do in my life and my work is building community. And so it was really almost, kind of beyond serendipity when Dana reached out. It was like, wow, if somebody could have designed a project that I would have loved to be part of, this is it. And it was just great from start to finish to be involved.
That's so awesome. That's so good to hear. I love it. What has been the students' feedback from this project?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit.
Sure.
Dana, if you want to jump in as well.
Either one of you, yeah.
So students, these were first-year students. And so imagine stepping onto a campus for the first time, right? And for many of them, they're walking to this class, they're taking maybe a math class, or maybe they're taking a writing class, and then they're taking this class on walking that has them get out of the classroom, quite a bit, and do all these little projects on their own, and journal about it, but then do this group project together. So I think it was a little bewildering, to be honest, but everything is bewildering to them, in kind of that first few weeks on campus. And so I think it was week 3 when we all met at ʷadis Park, and kind of had an orientation to what we were about to do. Some of the students really, really got into it, and we broke up into different teams, right? And so they were focused on different aspects of putting together the adventure lab, doing the research on the name change, doing the research on the bond measures, doing the research on the environmental restoration, and so in any group dynamic, especially with a bunch of 18-year-olds, there's some that are kind of take charge, and the others that kind of free ride on the whole thing. And once you get to the mid part of the quarter, and some students have their midterm exams, they're kind of, oh my goodness, college is different than high school, and so there's a little uneven in terms of overall participation with some students, but the general enthusiasm for the project certainly carried through. And one of the things that we focus a lot on, and maybe Dana can speak to this too, at UW Bothell, is one of our sort of mission statements is collaboration. They're going to do that in whether they're doing STEM classes or whether they're doing arts and sciences classes of all kinds. Like, collaboration is kind of a big thing. So for them to get the experience of working together in groups, figuring out, they certainly have some direction from me and from others, but a lot of it's their own content. They decide, what they're working on, how they're shaping the language. And one of the fun things at the end, and I think students enjoyed this too, was when Jeff came to class and we were ready to kind of publish what we're doing, and groups kind of came together, and we had to work on thinking about the user experience, but then also thinking about how much content we were putting in, and being relatively elegant and parsimonious. We didn't want to overload the user with too much information. So we think about how that worked, and we as a class kind of went through each group's language, kind of word by word, sentence by sentence, and kind of had a group verification of that. And that was very, very satisfying, I think.
Yeah, that's very cool. So how was it pushed out to the community? Dana, I don't know if you can weigh in on that.
I can just add a little bit more about the student experience.
Sure.
I know that Lauren got some quotes from some of the students. So hopefully we can get those ones. But our kind of goal is to onboard students of community engagement to get them ready for this. So like Jason said, these are first year freshman students. They just signed up for a class because it sounded cool. They didn't know what they were getting into necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think that is the biggest thing. We do a feedback survey at the end of every quarter, and most students say like, oh, I didn't know this was a community engaged learning course. But they then, once they realize what they did and like the impact that it had, they do go on to take more community engaged learning courses. So they seek it out because they liked that hands-on learning experience. So I think that is just something that students take away from any kind of course like this. I know City of Kenmore has a really great opportunities kind of pathway, so they're always accepting students to work in any of their departments. So I think it's just a great networking opportunity for students, and if they can get started their first year, first quarter, imagine where they're going to be at once they're ready to graduate. So that's kind of the student takeaway that I get to see. We do kind of aim to have these kind of experiences here at Bothell. In terms of where people can find this, it is on the app, so you just have to download Adventure Lab. If you're in the area, you can see which ones are on there. And we actually got a sponsored Adventure Lab this quarter because it's a city. So Geocache has a program where cities can have sponsored adventure labs or caches, and it will turn purple. So people can kind of see the difference to say like, oh, there's more people involved in this than just a community member. So that's pretty exciting. And yeah, I think last time I checked, there's like 17 people that already did the adventure lab, and they like leave comments about how they enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Okay, so you do get data on the maker end of what people are saying about the adventure lab that was created and who's participating. For everybody.
It's not just like a user account.
Oh, okay.
Anybody can go on and see.
Were the students responsible for promoting their lab? Like, how was it put out to the community that it existed and that it was created by the students?
Not responsible for promoting it. No.
Okay.
Bothell, as a whole, they created a story on Jason and they advertised it there. Our community engaged learning Instagram kind of advertises it, but Geocache really doesn't need advertising. Like, it is such a huge community that people are already seeking these, but I think even great marketing opportunities like this podcast will be another place for student people and community members to go seek out this specific one. So it's purple if you want to find it.
It's purple. Okay. I'll link that in the show notes too, so that people can go and download I'm going to do it. So do you think that what was the goal of this project, Jason? And do you think that the goal was met?
I think it was met. I think there are multiple goals. One was to just add a fun, class-based group project together, because a lot of the walks that they do in their practicum are kind of individual walks, and I have them go walk with their grandparents, and they go walk with a friend, and they go walk in the city, and they go walk, out in nature in the forest and that kind of thing. And they journal about all these things, but to do it together as a class with a group project like this. And as mentioned before, just getting them to know a place, that's nearby, because so many of them are, they do commute in, and they zoom in, they zoom out. Many of them don't even stay on campus. They'll go have a lunch in their car and then just, and then to kind of take off. So I think that part was important. But to build teamwork, especially at this age, to negotiate together about how we're going to do this research, how we're going to communicate it. We went out to the park several times, after they worked in teams, kind of figured out what they were going to do, to kind of have them all imagine coming to this for the first time, using this app. And, what would be the user experience? What would that be like? And for many of them, they want to go into sort of techie kinds of fields where they're going to make products and have this kind of user experience, and to have them do this in a unique way in a park like this for a class on walking, and walkability, I think was important in that way. But also some light research too. They couldn't go too in depth because it's just an app, but I had them, kind of read around quite a bit as much as possible and kind of filter through what's the most salient and important things to put in this adventure lab. That part of it was useful too, as you think about the whole research process from an academic point of view. Oftentimes you read around and you gather as much information as possible, but you've got a discipline, you've got a page limit, you've got to figure out what's important and what's kind of extraneous to the whole process.
Yeah, it's such a cool project. I'm just so excited. Jeff, did you do the
I did.
lab?
I was actually the first one to do it. I did it. The way the app is set up is you can kind of do a test run, maybe, kind of call it a beta version before it's published. And I did that ahead of time just to kind of test everything out, and everything was great. And then we pushed it live, which is a very seamless process, and then went and officially did it, and left a picture with me and my wife of completing it. And
cool.
we love this park, and it was a great excuse to go back. And like Jason said, look for the herons, look for the otters, and those sorts of things.
Is there anything else that any of you want to make sure to include on here before we sign off?
I'll just say, for those who are interested in getting into geocaching, like Amber, and others, the easy way, there's a website called geocaching.com, and that's where you can learn more about how it works. That's where you can sign up for your free account. There is a paid account, a premium account, which gives you more features, but they're not needed at first. And then there's 2 apps that I would start with. One is called Geocaching, and you find it in the whatever store you're, whether it's an iPhone or a Google phone or whatever. Go to your store and find it. And the one that you need for this specific Adventure Lab is a separate app called Adventure Lab. But they're interconnected. If you go to geocaching, it'll point you to the other one. And they're both free to download. It's a very low bar to get involved. And like I said earlier, just download the apps and jump in and see what you like and go for it.
No reason to be bored on a Saturday. Wow, this has been amazing. Anything else that you want folks to know?
Yeah. So I've actually, in talking about this and learning more about geocache, I've reached out to other professors, and I was like, well, this is really easy to do. And it's a really great project. Do you want to do this? And I've actually found out that some professors have already done it on their own for their classes. So that's even just more speaks to the essence of geocache about how it brings community together. So I definitely see this just being a vehicle for community engagement, and it can happen across a lot of different disciplines. So I'm excited for that. And then I guess just a tip, a community partner last year I was working with kind of said this to me, and it's always kind of stuck to me, but it's if you want to be in community, you have to be in community. So you actually have to go out and engage. And that just kind of speaks to the essence of how this partnership happened, with my lovely ability to cold call and just show up and just DM people randomly. So you really just have to go out and be in community to find it, because it's there, and there's a lot of great people that are willing to just kind of bond and connect, and that's what we want our students to feel, that connection, not just in their Bothell community or with their classrooms through team projects, but also with the greater Seattle area. So very thankful for partners that are willing to accept our students and kind of give them those experiences.
Yeah. Agreed. It goes both ways, because I am very grateful for you guys for allowing me to reach out to you and have you on the show, because community engagement is really important for the city as well. So very, very cool.
I guess I would echo what Dana says in terms of community engagement, and I'd certainly be interested in doing something like this in the future. It's a great way to get to know a place, but also get to know people. And I think for students, getting to know people who work for the city, who work in quote unquote government, right? That these are people, and that they're there to serve the community, that they're there to enhance, public experiences. And especially for a town like Kenmore, which is relatively younger, I think there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm. And I think it's great for my students to see, people that are working in city government in that way, in promoting things to do and places to be and activities to experience, in Kenmore. I think was pretty awesome for my students.
Very well said. I agree. Well, Jeff, Jason, Dana, thank you so much for your time and for your collaboration on this project. It is very cool. I will link it in the show notes so that anybody who wants to go participate in the Adventure Lab can do so. And thanks again for all of your hard work on this project and for partnering with Kenmore.
Thanks a lot.
You bet. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Kenmore. Be sure to check back for more interesting topics and conversations. And as always, don't forget to ask yourself, where's the fun?